Hello and welcome to the Major Film Reviews podcast. Welcoming me back to the podcasting realm after about a year out. This first one's a very special episode. It's June, so it's Pride Month, and I've got the hot topic of Pride issues in film to talk about with my brand new permanent co-host. So please. Welcome my new co-host. This is Angel Rulofs. Say hello, Angel.
Hello, Angel. Sorry, couldn't resist that one.
Do you want to give the listeners a bit of background on yourself?
Oh gosh, where do I start? Well, I was born on a stormy Thursday morning. Actually, I don't know whether it was stormy, and I was born on a Tuesday, so yeah.
Off to a good start.
Yeah, but I think sticking with the Pride Month, I'm trans, so yeah, at the moment I do sound quite feminine. Hopefully the testosterone will keep kicking in and things will change. So yeah, I'm trans. I identify as Jigglypuff screaming into the void.
I think we can all relate to that.
Yeah, I kind of try to take a bit of humor with the just constant attacks on gender that we're having at the moment. So I'm just like, yeah, I identify as a Jigglypuff. Like, if you're not going to take my gender seriously, then I'm gonna try and find humor to survive in it. But no, in terms of gender, it's transmasculine.
Mhm.
So yeah, I don't feel feminine or female. I think there's
Well,
I'm still exploring that, but
yeah.
yeah, I prefer they them pronouns and he him. I'm kind of sort of test driving.
Well, we'll see how we go and how many times I slip up, and you can correct me. But I'd originally thought of doing this topic for a podcast a few months ago. Obviously, with me, I'm not trans. I'm a cis man. I'm gay, but I'm not trans. So I didn't want to go out on a limb on my own and go spouting opinions which were unfounded without a more experienced head to kind of go along with me, because I don't really like speaking for other people or other um, minority groups. So, which is why I invited Angel on here, and because Angel's a good friend of mine and a very well informed person, I thought I might as well invite them to be my permanent co-host, because they're we did a podcast about a year and a half ago, didn't we, on representation?
Yeah,
So this is a
yeah.
kind of nice way of following up on that.
Mm.
And I ideally wanted to talk about kind of all sorts of LGBT topics this month, but I thought focusing on trans would be the best, because there seems to be the quarter of the LGBT spectrum which isn't really represented all that well in mainstream film. We seem to be seeing more and more queer stories year after year, but very little to do with the topic of gender, which is why I
Yeah.
thought it was worth looking at here. So,
Yeah.
off the bat, then, Angel, do you have any particular film in mind that you think stands out as a good representation of transsexuality in film?
Transgender, where transsexuality is an outdated term, and there's a
Oh,
lot of
sorry. Yes,
how.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
we're
Of
already
course.
started.
Yeah.
We're already started. Yeah, there's just a lot of violence and aggression, and it's yeah, transsexual and transsexualism. We're as a community moving away from that because of
Yes,
everything
of
that's attached to
course.
it. It's not entirely I want to say accurate, but accurate is not the word I'm looking for right now.
Appropriate.
Yes, yes, that's the word.
Right.
Yeah.
I've made a note
But
of
in
that.
yeah, but in terms of films with some good trans rep. I'm struggling. I'm actually struggling. It's just like, what films have I seen recently where it's just like, yep, that has a transgender person in it, and I didn't scream into the void, and I'm struggling.
I mean, that seems to be a recurring thing with the films that I've
Yeah.
got noted down. Is
Mm,
they're very rarely about a transgender character. They have a transgender
mm,
character there, or there might be a subtext of transgenderism, but they're not
yeah.
specifically about it.
Yeah. I think so far the only ones where I can think of where it's just like there's trans rep and it's been decent. There've been TV series,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, that's Teen Titans.
Teen Titans. Okay,
Yeah,
I don't know about that one.
yeah, it's not exactly trans rep either. It's just it has one of my favorite trans humans. I mentioned this in our previous conversation. Chellaman, he's
Mm-hmm.
transgender. He's an artist and just an all-round amazing human being, and he's um, Asian American.
Right.
So it's yeah, and yeah, he plays Jericho in Teen Titans. And
Right.
I'm just actually thinking, is the character actually trans? It's just like no, he's just playing Jericho. I don't think him being trans gets mentioned at all, but he is a deaf person as well.
He's deaf as well. All right.
Yeah, yeah. So that gets mentioned. That's part of the character's backstory. So it's just like I'm getting trans rep in the sense of Chellaman's existence, and then there's the deaf rep as well, which is just I don't get to see a lot
No.
of. Yeah. So,
So is he a vocal deaf character, or does he? Well, obviously it's an animated series.
mm. No,
Is
it's
it
not
Teen
the
Titans
no, it's
animated or
not
the?
Teen. Yeah, I'm messing up here. Teen Titans is the animated series. Titans is the series, a live action series that's
Oh,
on
Titans,
Netflix.
right? The Netflix
Yes,
one. Yeah.
yes, but because it's based on Teen Titans, yeah, I messed it up on that one. Yeah, so
So is his character vocal, or does he use sign language then?
he is speaking. Yeah,
He
he's
speaks as well. All right. Cool.
yeah, he has cochlear implants, whereas with me, I've just had surgery that, quote unquote, cured me. I'm like,
Hmm.
yeah, that's what the doctor said to me. For listeners who don't know about that background, I grew up deaf. It was 60-40%, and I've had at least 3 surgeries, and I can hear now, but I still have processing issues where it's just sound. So my brain's just like, hey, we can hear, and I'm like, that's great, but what is this noise we're hearing? Sound. Okay, but process, please. So there may be times where I'm just like, say that again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
um, which is something you're usually quite
Mm,
vocal on Twitter about with
yeah.
subtitle films as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's just subtitles everywhere on everything.
the biggest example of a trans, like an all-encompassing trans story I can think of is also a TV series, and it's Transparent,
Yeah,
which
I've
is
not actually got around to watching that yet.
I I haven't either, but it's the biggest kind of one that sprang to mind
Mm,
immediately. Um,
yeah.
of course, it's a story of a trans woman transitioning kind of middle age kind of thing. The the trans woman is played by a cis man, which is problematic, and it becomes more problematic when
Mm,
the cis man was accused of sexual harassment stuff. But that's for another time. Um, that's that, and Orange is the New Black. There's a Laverne Cox is in that.
Yeah,
She plays a trans character in that. There's
yeah, that. I mean, the thing that I really love, sorry for cutting you off there. The thing that I really love with Orange is the New Black with Laverne Cox is when they got her twin brother to show her when she was pre-transition.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
was just like, this is how we can do things. It
that's really
is
cool.
actually possible to have an actual trans actor portray a trans character and get maybe somebody else involved or get that person, to do the pre-transitioning. We don't have to do the thing of cis person portraying an opposite gender.
I mean,
It's
in
not.
a, in a, in a way, it's extremely lucky that Laverne Cox had a twin brother
Yeah,
that could portray them pre-transition.
yeah,
Uh, which I suppose is something that not a lot of trans
mm,
actresses will have.
yeah.
So that was a nice stroke of luck. I haven't seen much of Orange is the New Black, to be honest, but I do know of it. One that I had watched quite a lot of years ago was Glee. Apparently, there's two trans characters in Glee. I'm not sure whether you watched that when it was on, did you?
Yeah, I started watching it and then I stopped after one particular episode because I just couldn't continue. It was Flynn's death, and I was just,
Oh yeah, that was really
yeah,
sad.
that I just, oh, just thinking about that episode, it's still really heartbreaking.
It's
I
weird
just,
because that is exactly the same episode when I stopped watching as well. Because
yeah,
I just couldn't watch anyway. In fact, I hadn't watched it for a while before that either. But I made a special point of watching that episode and and it being particularly heartbreaking, really. But
yeah.
um, the two trans characters in that one of them is the gym teacher. Um, Beasts, they think they're called. The surnames is kind of similar to Beast. They went from I think Sharon to Sheldon, so they were a trans man. Um, and that
What?
was yeah.
I
Um,
did not, what? So, oh my, wait, let me just Google this real quick because, like, how did I not? Because I knew that there was one actor on Glee. I think they were only on for like a couple of episodes,
yeah, there was a
and
younger one as well.
yeah, and they've transitioned in their private life. So I didn't realize that there was actual like characters that were trans.
Yeah, Beast transitioned in later seasons, I think.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so that was quite interesting.
Yeah, see,
And
fictional trans. So.
the I think the portrayals in that particular series is probably helped by the series creator
Oh, there was
Ryan
Wade as
Murphy being.
well. Sorry, that's yeah, Wade Unique Adams, male to female transgender teenager. So, oh, I vaguely remember Unique, because
Yeah, unique.
yeah, Alex Newell, they won the Project Glee um TV series.
There's another feature of this podcast, me teaching Angel things they didn't know.
Right. Oh yeah, yeah. I'm seeing pictures of Unique, and she's like, I remember her. I didn't realize she started off. Okay.
Of course, the creator of Glee, Ryan Murphy, is very heavily involved in a lot of LGBT issues, and a lot of his series deals with that kind of stuff. So it was in a good pair of hands, I think, when that was introduced to the series.
Mm, yeah. So I'm still just reading up on things because I'm just like, how did I miss this?
So, do you let's put our cards firmly on the table now. Do you ever
Yeah.
think that it's acceptable for a cis actor to play a trans character?
Oh, um, I think there may be some circumstances
Hmm.
where it can be acceptable, but it depends on what those circumstances are. But in general, blanket statement, a trans actor should be playing a trans character.
Hmm.
It's just that there's only so far that acting can go, but it's also the message that the trans community generally gets when we see a cis actor
Yeah.
playing a trans character, especially when it's of an opposite or a different gender. The amount of times where there's been a man dressed as a woman saying
Hmm.
that they're a woman, the amount of times where society has and our community is just like we're just seeing a man in drag, and that's all that our society will see trans people as.
Yeah.
Um, it's just the thing of we're never going to be seen as the gender that we are, just the gender that people associate us with. I had like a next door neighbor, an old next door neighbor, last week, just basically telling me it's like, oh, you'll always be, and they dead named me, and I'll never see you as like anything else. And I mean that with so much respect. I'm like, how is that respectful to tell me that you'll never see me as the person that I am?
Hmm.
And then with things like TV and film where they're showing people a man dressed as a woman saying that they're a woman, and it's just there's that disconnect. And there was one film that was going to be made by Rachel Weisz about the doctor. I think I want to say James Barry.
Was this the one where Scarlett Johansson was going to be playing a
No, it was
trans
Rachel
man?
Weisz.
Right.
Yeah, and she's playing a doctor that's basically a man.
Hmm.
But there was allegations during the autopsy of this doctor that they were actually, quote unquote, actually a woman.
Oh
And it's
yes,
yeah,
I remember
yeah,
this.
it's
Yeah.
that thing of they're actually a woman, and it's just like, well, hang on a minute. No, if he's lived his life as a man, he said that he's a man. He refused an autopsy for a reason, and if that reason is, you know, he's going to be misidentified and misgendered, and then we've got Rachel Weisz being like, "Oh, I'm going to play this male doctor."
Hmm.
There's a disrespect there. You're disrespecting a human being by saying, "Well, actually, no, you're this gender in disguise."
I think my general thinking has usually been the skills of the actor because it's always been an actor's
Mm,
job to be something that they're not. But I
to
think
a
what
degree.
to a degree, yeah, and I think at the point where I agree with you is when say in that example you just gave, Rachel Weisz playing a trans man, as it were, where would there be as much a problem for you? And I think this is where I kind of see it as a little bit of a grey area. If it was a cis man playing a trans man, or on the other side of it, a cis woman playing a trans woman, because at least they are then portraying the correct
Mm.
gender.
Yeah, because you've got a man playing a man. So in that respect, I'm just like, well, you've got a male actor portraying a male character, or in this sense, a male historical figure,
Hmm.
like a real person. So in that sense, I'm like, man portraying man. It's just my preference in that scenario would be get a trans man, because with this particular character, with this person, we're not 100% sure that this. I really need to research his name. We're not 100% sure that he is a trans man or just a man that was just like, no, don't touch me. Like, I know I may be dead, but like, no autopsy.
I think this doctor, I remember reading about him.
Yeah.
It was a time when women weren't doctors, and he'd hidden his identity to live his life as a man just to be a doctor. I think if I remember rightly, and he was a very well respected doctor as well.
Yeah, yeah. I've just got his name up. James Miranda Stewart Barry.
Hmm.
Yeah.
This was
Um,
kind of Victorian Edwardian slash Edwardian era, I think. Was it not?
yeah, he was
Yeah.
born in 1795 and
Oh, it was
died
even
in eight.
earlier then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
died in 1865.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's
Yeah,
that.
one of the
There's that.
first one of the first articles is, a woman ahead of her time review. And it's just like he's being misgendered right
Yeah.
there. Second article. And it's just, for me personally, it's just an absolute disrespect because he's lived his entire life as a man, and in his death, people are misgendering him. And for what, really? What's the purpose? What do people gain out of doing
Yeah.
that?
And
So,
there was also the example a few years ago of Scarlett Johansson was going to be playing a trans man, I think, and I think
yeah.
quite a lot of the fallout from that came of her kind of attitude towards it rather than
Mm,
her casting in the first place. I
yeah.
mean, because
It,
from a certain Hollywood perspective, I can see why they do this. It's because names put bums in seats, basically. So and
okay, but how
because
did Scarlett Johansson become a name? So this is
exactly, well,
where I
that's
try not to get aggressive because like people pull that argument up all the time. I was just like, okay, but who was Chris Evans before Avengers? Who was Chris Hemsworth before Avengers? What about Robert Downey Jr. before Avengers? Like,
that's where I was about to go with that.
sorry.
Is that that because we have a lack of trans actors now, all it would take was one big role to turn them from an unknown trans actor into potentially the biggest trans actor. You know, it just takes the right chosen person at the right time to create a new star like that. You know,
And
and
they,
it's a risk, and we know that because films are getting more expensive. Studios are a lot more risk averse now, but it is even from a PR perspective, it's worth it for a studio to take that risk and have that positive PR spin. Even if it then doesn't make it for the right reasons, it's at
yeah,
least a step in the general right direction.
it's one of those things of like, what do you do for the sake of progression? Yeah, it's ideally it shouldn't be as huge of an issue as what it is. And
It's
with the whole, yeah, like with the whole, sunflowers and lemon drops,
mhm,
if studios were just like, we are actually going to cast on talent,
mhm,
we would have more diversity just in general, not just trans or LGBT, like people of color. We'd have more diversity, especially in terms of disability, but that is an entire segment in itself.
but
And
what you
it's
just
just
said,
like you said, yeah, it just takes one studio to be like, actually, we have this amazing character, we have this amazing actor. It just so happens that one of these is trans. Like the character is trans, we've got a trans actor. It's just it would be absolutely amazing if like a studio could be like, right, we've got a romance coming out, and we've got a trans woman and a trans man, and they're the leads. Oh, by the way, one of them's disabled, and the other one's a person of color, and just go for it.
but you see,
But there's
that's
risk. Right.
that's the thing of the risk averse is that
Mm,
story can be made into a universal struggle.
mm,
Like if that story was told right, you wouldn't need to be a trans person or a disabled person to properly
mm.
empathize with it because
Yeah.
a lot of struggles, no matter what gender or sexuality you are universal struggles.
Yeah.
You don't need to be the same as that person to understand their troubles.
But
But
it
it's
it
sorry.
feels like having that representation. somehow makes it all about that representation. And it's
Yeah.
just like, no, all you need to do is just get this story that you've already got and just hire someone that just happens to be disabled or a person of color or trans or, let's be really wild here, all of each. Like, you can have a disabled queer person of color as the lead, and people will watch that movie because the story itself is worth watching.
The
Yeah, sometimes it feels like Hollywood or, the big sort of film industry, sometimes it feels like they don't have enough faith in their own writing,
mm,
that they have to rely on certain actors and, the whole big name superstar thing to draw people in. And it's just like, no, if you listen to what we're saying, we want a really good story. We want quality over quantity. And it's just, we also want fairer representation.
something you touched on a few minutes ago about it not wanting to be a big deal has always been one of my big arguments around queer characters in the first place.
Mm,
Is that the more we normalize making a fuss about every last queer
yeah,
character, the more it seems like a strange other thing. Like whenever Disney decide to have a gay character, like my mind always goes to when LeFou was very, very briefly seen dancing with a man or seen, lusting after Gaston. A big deal was made of the fact that Disney had made a gay character, and to
yeah,
the point they already had because the shopkeeper in Frozen was gay,
mm,
and nobody made a fuss about that. And that's kind of the way I want it to be. I want I want them to be able to have gay characters and tell queer stories
yeah,
without it having to seem like a circus because it then just
mm,
makes it all seem all the more other, makes it seem all the more
yeah.
strange.
Without that othering, yeah, completely. Like with Star Trek, where Sulu went to meet his husband and
Mhm.
his daughter, and it was just like, wait, hang on, Sulu is husband gay? Oh my god, amazing! And that was it. It was just so normalized. Like, he was, God heaven forbid, an actual human being. Like, Sulu is human, right? Okay, let's go with
Yeah,
humanoid. He's an actual humanoid being who just so happens to be married to a man with a child, and it's just like, that is everyday life. That has been going on for millennia.
another
And
good example of that is Brooklyn Nine-Nine with Captain Holt,
yeah,
who who isn't portrayed as the kind of effeminate queer character that we've kind of
mm,
been normalized to. He's just
yeah,
a police chief who's also a person of color and happens to be
yeah.
gay.
He's just another person that you're going to meet in the street kind of
Yeah.
person. And yeah, that's really quite nice to watch because again, it's not that othering. It's not a stereotype of how we're portrayed, and it's just there's a sense of realism to it. I
Hmm.
mean, it's not entirely real, but it's just it feels more normalized in a sense of we're not, yeah, like you said, it's not a circus. We don't have to dance through hoops.
No,
Dance, jump through hoops.
jump through hoops. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and that's more of what I want to watch, where it's just we're just there, we exist.
I mean,
And
in a way, trans people are even further back in the line than gay characters would be in film because at least
mm,
gay characters have been established for a bit longer than trans have. So maybe
yeah,
they're still at the kind of larval stage, still in their pods, ready to become butterflies, if you will. Um,
mm,
I mean, and I mean, this is nothing new because one of the things I found in my research, which I was reminded of, because I remember noting this when I last watched it, was that Monty Python's Life of Brian actually has a trans character in it.
yeah,
It's, Eric Idle portrays a character who says that they want to be called Loretta because they want to be a woman. And
Rebecca. Oh, it's been years since I've watched
and even though it's kind of wildly at first played for a laugh, by the end of the film, he's he's called Loretta by all of his friends. It's then normalized by the end of it, which I
that.
thought
Yeah,
was kind of really nice for something like that. That it was brought full circle,
yeah.
and apparently there's also a transgender character in Alien as well, which I didn't know.
I have so much to educate myself on.
One of the female crew members was a trans woman. Apparently, I don't remember this from watching the film, but this is what I found out. Then there's also something a bit more subtextual. There's The Matrix, which a few people have suggested
Yeah,
may be an allegory for transgenderism.
yeah. That's quite an interesting read on the Matrix because I started rewatching the series a few months back when it was it a few months back? When did they release the information that they were gonna continue the series?
Last year, I think.
Last year. Wow. Okay, this is how time does not exist to me. So yeah, I was just like, okay, they're gonna bring out some more stuff. I'm gonna rewatch this. And I'm watching this thinking, I kind of relate to this from a trans perspective. Is this oh that is not on silent. Yeah. So I was just watching this just thinking, is this what they were trying to say, or is this just something that I'm projecting?
I mean, it makes more sense the more you know about the people behind it.
Mm,
'Cause of course, the Wachowskis are both trans women who
yeah.
went out at the time of the Matrix. But the more that
Mm,
you kind of watch and understand and look for the subtext, the more that you find
yeah.
that it could very well be an allegory
Mm,
for what they were going through at the time.
yeah.
And I also think that both of them had, well, neither of them knew of the other one being trans, I think.
Mm,
So the fact that they were both writing this at the same time without knowing that about
yeah.
each other speaks volumes, really.
Yeah. I think there's yeah. But I think with the Matrix as well, it's not such a clear cut. This is an allegory for being trans. I
Mhm.
think it's sort of vague enough that you can interpret it. There is that sort of artistic license where it's just like this could very well be about a trans point of view, trans experience, especially with like Neo, where it's just like that resistance in the first film of being Neo, where
Mhm.
it's just like no, well this is actually my name, and then as the series, the trilogy progresses, it's just like well no, actually I am Neo. So it's just that thing of is that the character coming to terms with their gender identity or just their identity as an actual person. I think it's sort of broad enough for people to project their own experiences on it, which as an art form is absolutely amazing. And that it's still, after all these years, you can, rewatch it and it's still a good series. It's still a good set of films to watch. I say series because of the animatrix and everything that's involved with it. It still kind of stands up. And for
I
me,
th-
it is just an amazing piece of art that the Wachowski sisters have created. And yeah, it's almost
the
universal.
the thing about something like the Matrix as well is it can basically be whatever you want it to be about. Like you can project whatever meaning you want onto the kind of uh, artistic portrayal of it. It can
Yeah,
be about any number of things if you want to look at it that way.
yeah. And that's pretty much what every artist strives for, I feel personally,
Yeah.
is to create a piece of art that people can go back to time and time again and be like, well, actually, I resonate with this. This is what I get from this experience, from this art piece. And for me as a trans person, I can actually see certain things that I heavily relate to, and I
Mhm.
can take that with me from the Matrix. And then you, as a gay man, can watch it and be like, well, actually, from your like gay experience, this is how you feel within society and the otherness, and then accepting your identity. And I think with the um, the diversity with people, people of color that are in it, people can watch that and be like, well, actually, I relate this experience to it.
The
I mean, I can't say anything for the people of color at all, but I think it is a possibility.
the thing about films like that is it reminds me. I was talking to a friend of mine about Joker the other day, and basically my point was that that film can be as political as you want it to be, or as non-political as you want it to be, and the same kind of applies to the Matrix. It can be
Yeah,
basically as allegorious as you want it to be, or it can just be an action film that you watch and enjoy.
it
No,
could be complete and utter pure escapism, or it could be, have you taken the red pill yet? Go fuck yourselves. you know, you couldn't use it in so many different ways, or unfortunately, abuse it in different ways, as we've recently discovered on Twitter. Shall we go there?
uh,
Do we have enough time?
no, I
Do we
don't
have enough
think we do.
spoons? I don't know. I think that's just, yeah, I think that's a series in itself.
Basically, yeah. I mean, we could just do an entire string of episodes about stupid things on Twitter, and
Just Twitter alone as a series, because, like, oh, there's a lot to unpack.
there is. But and it's basically because some films are just like Rorschach tests. They're basically
Yeah.
they're mirrors of what the person watching it wants to see,
Yes. That is beautiful.
which is another
Yeah.
way of looking at Joker too, because a lot of people can watch that and it basically reflects their own thinking back to them.
Yeah. I think sometimes it says more about the person than
Yeah,
it does the
definitely.
film itself.
Because because the thing about films is they're they're not a mold. They don't mold society. They reflect society.
Yeah. Yeah.
So so they're not direct. They're not the kind of catalyst of influence to anything in society. If anything, they're just showing us what we either already know or don't want to face.
But I do
Basically.
think some films do reflect the directors and the producers, what they're thinking and how they're feeling about certain issues. Because like with the Stonewall film,
Hmm.
the director of that, he said that he just made it for white gay men.
Hmm.
Just like he essentially whitewashed it. There was huge backlash against it, and he just doubled down. It's just like, well, this is my film. This appeals, this part of the story appeals to me,
Hmm.
and that's what I'm going to show. And it's just like you basically whitewashed our history.
I
'Cause,
vaguely remember that controversy actually.
yeah, because there was Marsha P. Johnson. She is one of my heroes.
That's the black trans woman that threw the first stone at the Stonewall riot, correct?
Yes,
Yep.
bless you for remembering that, because people are just glossing over a very important piece of our history,
Yeah, yeah.
especially what's happening at the moment with Black Lives Matter. Because,
Hmm.
like, if it weren't for a black trans sex worker activist, if it weren't for a riot, we as an LGBT community globally would not have what we have now.
No.
We wouldn't have equal marriages. We'd more than likely still be seen as being like illegal. I think it was in the 60s.
In the UK, it was 1967 that it was
Yeah.
legalized,
Yeah.
and that was only between men. It was never actually illegal between women.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, and it's
So
just because of, you know, it was, there was another a black woman as well. Is it Stormy? Hang on, I can never remember her surname, and I really should remember her name. Bear with me whilst I bring this up. And I remember her first name is Stormy, and I'm just like, that is an epic name, and it's just our entire community. Yeah. Oh my goodness. I really apologize. I am about to butcher her surname. I
okay,
cannot apologize enough. Delavery?
Delavery.
Yeah. So it's two black women that are basically the pillars of the LGBT society, and everything that we have right now, we owe to them. And
Well,
okay, it's
when
not
you're remembering the
them,
history,
but yeah, they are very, very important to our history, and we owe them so much. Because one was the first to throw a brick, the other one was the first to throw a punch, and we have directors whitewashing them from our history in their films, and it's just, and he's saying, oh well, it appeals to me because it just does, and it's just why? What what do you gain from doing that?
it's because history is written by those with the power to write it, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. And he had the power to write that film and
Exactly. I think
created that.
was that Matthew Vaughn, I think, who made the
Um,
Stonewall film? Or was it
Emery, Emery. I
um
know it's so descent.
because there was also the Pride film over here, which was Matthew
Yeah,
Warchus. That was a really good film actually. That was
yeah, I
the one
enjoyed that.
about the miners' strike as well. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, there was still a few inaccuracies with the Pride film with in terms of the lesbian representation.
I think when it comes to inaccuracies, that we're never going
Yeah,
to get it 100%.
yeah, no, but there's like slight inaccuracies, and then there's just complete and utter whitewashing where you're just, like with the Stonewall film, it's like Marsha P. Johnson was just displayed as a ditzy drag queen.
Because the basic thing about writing a film about history is some of it is not going to be as interesting to your viewer, no matter how many interesting it seems to you.
Yeah,
That doesn't really apply in the Marsha P. Johnson sense because that is interesting.
yeah, it's also, like I said, it's a foundation. She's one of the key people that we owe our lives to, everything to,
Mhm.
and just to have that just swept aside, it's just it for me personally, it just feels like an absolute injustice how she was just like, she wasn't even, she was barely even a side character.
Yeah,
I mean, there is artistic license, but there's also just sweeping things aside and being highly inaccurate.
yeah.
Slight inaccuracies, I mean, artistic license, and then just completely bulldozing something.
I mean,
It's two extremes. We're at two extremes.
it it, it reminds me vaguely of I, one of my favorite actors when I was younger was Jim Carrey, and
Mm,
I used to love the Ace Ventura films. But when I rewatched the, I think it's the first one, it's really awkward to rewatch now because the main villain of the piece is
mm,
a trans woman who is kind of the, by the end of the film, Ace Ventura basically reveals that she's a man or whatever. That kind of gross out ending where everyone that's kissed this woman starts to be sick and what have you, and it just feels really nasty now.
that explains why I don't remember the films. I've blocked them out then.
Yeah,
So, with the character starts off as a woman or
yeah.
transitions into a woman.
No, it's they are always thought to be a woman. They're the chief of police, if I remember rightly, and
Right.
they're kind of shown to be a little bit promiscuous. They kiss a lot of people, and then at the end of the film's climax, they
Mm.
somehow end up with their trousers or skirt was down, and Ace Ventura spots that they're tucked basically. So then he points out that this woman's got a penis, and like
Okay.
all the police officers that have kind of kissed her throughout the film just start being sick, and it's really nasty.
Because heaven forbid a person should have any form of romantic interest or relations with a trans person.
I know it's just very nasty and mean spirited.
Yeah, that's. Oof. Yeah, that's hitting a bit personal because
Yeah,
my own experiences where it's just my own mother asking me, it's like, how are you ever gonna find love? And I'm just like, thanks. And then you see this sort of representation in films where it's just like, oh my goodness, you just kissed a trans person. I'm gonna vomit.
I mean, even Seth MacFarlane's managed to handle it with at least a little bit of decency at times. I mean, not all of the time, of course. This is Seth MacFarlane, but he's.
Try not to hold my breath, holding my breath.
I mean,
yeah,
even South Park. I mean, South Park of all things managed to handle it better than that. You know?
Yeah, South Park has had some quite surprising moments where it's just like, okay, you're making a point, but I'm still just gonna fancy my way out of here.
I mean, the thing about South Park is it's not as mean spirited as it seems on the surface. I mean, all of the mean spirited things of the show go through Cartman, who we are kind of heavily led to believe is a terrible person, and quite a lot of, especially the later stuff, deals with a lot of complex issues with a high level of political satire and
Yeah.
not necessarily kid gloves, because that's not the way the series works so much, but it definitely has more of a heart than people think it does, I'd say.
Yeah. I think in terms of Cartman specifically, Cartman is very multifaceted, and it's the thing of, oh, he's not like bad all the times. He has some good points, and it's just there's context and intent. And it's just
Yeah.
the thing of like sometimes an absolutely horrible person may just decide to not step on a bug or help somebody up or do something nice. Just because somebody does something nice, just because they smile at you, doesn't mean that they are actually nice, they are a good person. People are very complex
Yeah.
and faceted, and it's just the thing of how you deal with that, how you see it, how you interpret it, and how you project it either onto yourself or others.
Uh-huh.
It's quite quite complex with that one. The way I feel about South Park, it's it's easy to poke fun at things that we don't understand, that we aren't a part of, and sometimes jokes can actually do more harm than good, especially if it turns out that you're the punchline. Yeah, with South Park, it's one of those.
It's a very complex show.
Yeah.
And I think for the most part, it does a good job of kind of towing the line between social satire and punching downwards, as it were. But at the same time, if when something is punching downwards, it's whether that's shown to be a good thing or whether they're shown to be a bad thing.
Yeah,
Or how the show leads us to think.
Yeah, because you have to see about how other characters react to it, and then how
Exactly,
and how it fits in society at that time. Kind of reminds me of the Christmas special of Gavin and Stacey.
Mm-hmm.
Have I ranted enough about that? No.
Oh,
will
God.
I keep ranting about that? Yes. I will not shut up about that.
But I'm of the personal opinion that that's a lot of fuss about nothing myself.
Whereas, this is where we can have like a very good, healthy discussion about this.
Hmm.
Whereas I'm on the fence where it's just like they wrote that song in knowing full well the amount of harm and damage that it does to our community.
Well,
And then
I
they had the nerve to double down and be like, well, actually, like that's what the characters would do. They wouldn't sing it like uncensored. I'm like, okay, that's what the characters would do, but you wrote that in. And James Corden still, claims to be an ally, but he wrote that in knowing the amount of damage that word does to our community, has done, and unfortunately will do because people, I mean, it it's just it's too much for
I
where we are as a society. It's still too much that should not have been written in,
I
and they
don't
know that.
see it that way myself because I know that word wasn't used with that meaning because it means something completely different in Ireland, which is the song was written by Irish songwriters who meant that word in a completely different way.
It's it's still the context and the intent. There's where it is in society because they after they wrote that, when people were just like, well, actually, can you not? Both Christy McCall and the Pogues, if I recall correctly, the Pogues themselves,
They
they
changed the
said,
lyrics.
yeah,
Yeah,
they changed the lyrics out of respect. They knew, they listened to our community, and they knew, like, actually, okay, even though our original intentions weren't to be offensive, we can see that that word does do a lot of harm. We know that there's a lot of murders that are attached to this word. There's a lot of violence that is attached to this word. Out of respect for these human beings, we'll change it. And yet we've got Jones and Corden just, well, that's not our intention. They wouldn't censor it anyways. And they're just making so many excuses. And it's just like you're just adding to the harm by not listening to us.
it is actually my favourite Christmas song. Is
It is a good song though.
Fairy
It's
Tale
just
of New
that one
York.
word where I'm just like
It's
when you've had that held at yourself and then had your face kicked in, it strikes a different it strikes a different chord. So it's
I think, as I say with a lot of things, it's the context. I mean, I
mm,
can't I can't hold against that song to have that word because
mm.
I know that word means something different than what we think it does to the
Whereas I've
songwriters.
personally had that thrown at me and have violence associated personally, it's it strikes different for me because I've
Yeah,
had that personal experience where people have said that and then physically assaulted me,
I mean,
which I don't take lightly to that word. Lightly, not likely, lightly. I just
I've had it before, but again, it's just how you look at things, really, isn't it? How how you because I listen to it even when it's not Christmas, that song, and
mm,
sing along to it, and I sing along to that word because that's the how it is in the song. But you know, it's it's good that the Pogues and especially I think it was Kirsty McCall who changed it
yeah,
originally.
yeah.
Went back and changed it on the feedback because it is a damaging word.
Mm. So I mean, I respect them for changing it, but then to have the uncensored, it kind of it feels like they're not just disrespecting our community by using the uncensored. They're kind of disrespecting the artist as well because they took the time to change it and they're
And
just like, actually, no, we don't care about your considerations.
as
We're
I
just
remember as well, the character that sings it in the show is explicitly, well, not explicitly, but he's very heavily hinted
coded,
that he
heavily coded as
heavily coded that
being,
he's gay. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. So it's just one of those things of I can understand that I think the excuses they gave was like, oh, he's of the generation where they wouldn't, whatever, they wouldn't they'd actually say that. I'm just like, but this is Bryn.
I
He's
mean,
heavily coded as gay.
it's fair enough to real
And
life, but the thing is, it's not real life, is it?
see, yeah, Nissa, I can completely expect that from that character. Completely.
Even expect it of Smithy, probably, but
Smithy, actually, I think no. I can't really. I see Smithy as actually being one that would be a bit like, really, mate? I mean, joke about, yeah, but is this going a bit too far? Whereas, was it Gavin, the way he turned around, was just like, oh my god, that's so naughty.
mm.
Like, did I just attempt a really bad Welsh accent, even though he's not the Welsh one? What am I doing? But yeah, with Gavin, the way he just turned around, it didn't seem more like, oh my god, what are they singing? It was just like, oh, that's so naughty, how scandalous. But that's just me projecting my never-ending salt levels. So, but yeah, I think in terms of that representation, probably not. Just
Getting back to topic, I've got
yeah,
a small list here of actors and directors of who identify as trans or as non-binary, and I just wanted to run a few names by you to see if you recognise them, what you think of their
yeah,
work, etc. So the first
yeah.
one I've got is Jamie Clayton, who is not a name I recognised, but she's a trans woman actress.
Was she in Sense8?
Yes, she was.
Yeah. Nomi?
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. I've been delving deep into The Sims. Like everything has been Sims. Yeah, I've created a Sim and I named her Noemi because I'm terrible with names. No, yeah, I started watching Sense8 at the beginning of the year. I say recently, it was at the beginning of the year. I was just like, I love Noemi. I love her. I love Noemi. But I got her name slightly wrong. But yeah, there's just I want to see more of her.
The second one is one that I knew. She's Laverne Cox. That's
Mm,
probably the most famous trans actress.
yeah,
Would say, yeah.
yeah. Like
Uh,
the work that she's been doing in terms of like activism and just being herself and not sitting down. I'm like, yes, just
I
keep
think
going,
she
keep
was also
fighting.
in. She was another one that was in Glee. I think Laverne Cox was in Glee at one point.
I, seriously, what is going on with Glee? Why is Glee just doing everything right now?
The next
I'm gonna have to rewatch Glee for sure.
the next name on my list wasn't actually one that I thought of at first, but then when I saw it on the list, it made sense. That's Eddie Izzard.
Yeah, gender fluid.
No, he refers to himself as an action transvestite. That's his identity. He refers, and I know that word's outdated, but that is how he identifies himself.
Yeah. Doesn't Eddie go by they them pronouns?
They do go by their actually, I'm not sure. I don't know. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry, they're them. Yeah, I'm
So
getting
I'm just like
completely
googling.
lost here. Yeah, I think they kind of mix their pronouns quite a lot.
Yeah, they're
Um,
not. Yeah,
because a lot of time they
yeah,
still identify present themselves as male. So
yeah. When asked what pronouns he prefers, Izzard said either he or she. Yeah,
mhm.
past
So
Izzard
both, yeah,
identified the transvestite, and he also called himself a lesbian trapped in a man's body. That,
yes,
that's an interesting statement, especially for current times. But I
yeah,
think in context, that was probably said in the 90s, early 2000s, where things like that were just.
yeah. Then there's quite a few participants in RuPaul's Drag Race who
Mm,
consider themselves as non-binary or gender fluid. The one who definitively calls themselves a trans woman is Peppermint, or
Yeah,
Miss Peppermint.
yeah. There's Gia Gunn as well.
Mm. Yeah, I'm not a rabid RuPaul watcher. I've only seen a little bit, so
Yeah. uh,
Peppermint was the name that jumped out at me.
Yeah, Peppermint was the first um, openly trans drag contestant. People like Gia and is it Michaels? I can see her, but they transitioned after being on the show.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because there is quite a lot of chatter around RuPaul and trans women,
Mm.
but I think that's probably a conversation for another time, to be honest,
Yeah.
because it's a very
That's
in-depth
another one of
conversation.
those where it's just like my salt levels are rising. I can rant for hours.
It's a,
Let's not. Let's
yeah,
not.
let's move on.
Yeah.
The Wachowskis, who we've already covered,
Mm.
Lily and
Lana.
what's Lana, Lily and Lana. I knew they both began with L, but I can't
Yeah.
remember what the other one was. Ruby Rose, who's non-binary.
Mm.
Um, one that
Wow.
surprised me is Cara Delevingne as well. It's gender fluid.
Okay.
Rose McGowan is gender fluid.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We're going there, are we?
Yeah.
Sorry, I have the things that Rose McGowan has said about trans people, especially trans women. I just lost so much respect for her because or them. What are Rose McGowan's pronouns?
I would
Yeah,
go with them just to be safe.
just yeah, I lost so much respect for Rose after everything that happened with the Me Too movement because Rose was doing so much good work and then trans women entered the chat and she just the disrespect. I can't.
And there's another one that's been in the chatter for negative reasons recently. There's Ezra Miller as well.
Mm,
Is gender
yeah,
fluid.
there's allegations made against Ezra, which I've not been keeping up to date with because it's just one of those things where it's just like everything is a mess.
I
I
saw
just,
the video. It didn't really give much context, and it wasn't a very good video. But
yeah.
and the final name I had down, which is another one that surprised me, was Richard O'Brien, who is the creator of the Rocky Horror Show. Is
Really?
yeah, he's gender fluid. He identifies as gender fluid.
Oh, that's a happy surprise.
Yeah,
But
I was quite surprised as
also
well.
thinking about Rocky Horror being, sweet trans. Um, yeah, that's gonna be a whole new meaning, whole new
Is
watch.
Rocky Horror considered negatively among the trans communities, or
There's a bit of divide because there's the language because transvestite, as I
yeah,
said,
yeah,
is outdated now. But it's also the thing of they're aliens.
yeah, and
Uh,
I believe transvestite is the name of the planet as well that they're from
yeah, Transylvania.
in the galaxy of Transylvania. Yeah.
No, I think the planet is Transylvania.
Oh
Um,
yeah, it's the planet transsexual in the galaxy Transylvania, isn't it? Yeah.
sorry, just reading up on Ezra Miller, and I'm just gonna vanish it out of Google. Oh, yeah,
Thank,
that's it enough for today.
thank the Lord for Google.
Mm,
So, say you're given a Hollywood producers coming to you for an idea,
mm,
and they want to give you a decent budget to make a film about trans people, trans issues.
yeah.
What would you want to see? What would your pitch be for this film that you have been given control of?
Mm, mm. First of all, I'd be like, right, I don't care what this is about. Chellaman, we're we're getting him. Just sign him. Yes. Um, I'd actually kind of want to do a romance. And romance isn't my preferred genre at all because
I
it's
can actually attest to
so
this.
cliche.
Having gone to see Parasite with Angel a few months ago, and during the very very brief sex scene in Parasite, sorry,
Ooh.
hid hid behind their hands in kind of awkwardness slash shock.
Yeah, the asexuality was very, very strong that day. Where it's just like, oh, this is too much. I don't need to see this. Like, can we just like artistic license and poetry and just like, nope, we're going straight for porn.
You
Yeah,
could
that's. Mm,
you could feel the awkwardness
mhm.
radiating from
I'm
you.
I'm pretty sure the people in the next screen were just like, why do I feel so awkward and cringy right now? What is happening? Yeah, I'm not very comfortable with those kind of scenes. I was just yeah, I think I've mentioned before where it's just like if I kind of want to watch those sort of sex scenes, I'll just go just watch porn. I don't there's certain ways of doing it, and I don't feel that kind of scene, like how explicit it was, is entirely necessary in mainstream media. I just yeah, I'm a bit like I want more art, please.
But
Instead of,
sex
I
sells,
mean,
Angel.
it, yeah, it does. Yeah, sorry, I'm just thinking of a particular group's song choreo, and oh boy, does that sell. But yeah, I think in terms of romance, it'd be like, have you seen, was it A Dog's Purpose, A Dog's
Yes,
Journey?
yes, I have.
Yeah, it was the sequel, and it had Henry Lau in it, one of my babies. And I like that kind of the romance sort of feel to that, where it's just like the girl falling in love with Henry Lau's character, and I'm like, another cute dog. I think I'd probably end up doing something where it's just like it's a romance with an animal, but then do I really want to get animals involved? Hmm. But what would I pitch? I do have like a few ideas for films, and there's one that's based on a Tumblr prompt of
Hmm.
oh, what was it called? Is it In and Out? No, All or Nothing,
Hmm.
where it's an asexual character who is like so outgoing, and versus their pansexual roommate who's like very introverted and quiet and just doesn't really like people. And it's just like those contrasts and juxtapositions and everything. So I'd quite like to bounce something off of that and just have it where it's just like two people just going through life as people, and then oh hey, they just so happen to like X, Y, and Z. I think it would depend on the actors. And it just yeah, what would I actually pitch? Hmm. But I also have this idea of the majority of mine just revolve around like asexual lead characters because
Hmm.
that's my thing. I don't see enough ace representation. So majority of my characters are ace. There you go. Have that. But yeah, there's an asexual sort of bookworm who just goes into a library. I think I just finished watching Neverending Story, and it's one of those fever dreams. But yeah, they go into an old secondhand bookshop, and they just get recommended a book. It kind of changes where the bookshop owner, the bookkeeper, um, recommends this really old book, or there was this thing where bookshops were wrapping books in like just brown paper
Hmm.
and just having genre and sort of like maybe content warnings or something. So you just pick it up and be like, okay, I want to read a drama or I want to read a mystery. You don't know anything else about it and you just take it home. And then the character just takes the book home and it's just like, oh, this is actually in like Latin or something, where it's just like, okay, well, I like languages. Let's try and study this. And then, like the absolute idiot that they are, maybe I've not done this myself. They just like read out a paragraph and it's just like, oh, wait, I just summoned like an incubus? Uh-oh. And then the incubus is just like, so, you summoned me. What can I do? Oh, you just want pizza? Really? That's it? And just something off there. And maybe like in Aladdin where it's just like, okay, well, let's free the genie kind of thing.
It sounds like a stoner HP Lovecraft series.
Just minus the racism, please.
Yeah, minus that obvious bit, yeah.
Yeah. So it's yeah.
I mean, personally, as a writer, I
Mm.
wouldn't necessarily dive into writing trans characters without having consulted pe- people who I know are trans first to kind of get a feel. But
Yeah.
I tend to like to focus on struggles. So like maybe something similar to Love Simon, the
Mm.
but as a trans story rather than a gay story.
Yeah.
Kind of struggle to be accepted and revolve a story around kind of a group of trans characters who struggle to be accepted where they live, because I think struggle of acceptance is again a universal human struggle that anyone can get behind. So
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah. Whereas from my point of view, I've kind of seen enough of the thing of, oh, it's so hard to be X identity. And I'm just like, okay, but what about the normal? Well, not normal. That is normal for us. A little too normal for us. I think for me, it's more the escapism into the nicer side of normal, I
yeah,
guess. Where it is, like the Sulu moment where it's just like, oh, he just happens to have a husband. Like he's married, but it just happens to be a man. I like to see that kind of element where it is a different story, but at the same time, it's more the same kind of
I
thing.
mean, I wouldn't be against kind of including a trans character in my writing, just kind of having
Mm.
them there with no explanation, no reasoning. They just exist because that's just people.
Yeah.
They're there, you know.
But it's the thing of
But
like, are they existing as a trans character because they have to be trans, or is it just
yeah,
one of those things of like, oh well, this is Robin. They're also trans, but like Robin needs to go to high school right now, and it's just that kind of thing where it's just like,
exactly. It's
yeah,
I don't want to write a character who is trans just to have a trans
mhm,
character there. You know, I
yeah,
want them to have reason to be in the story, to have a
yeah,
part of the story
yeah. So it's kind of like
without
that.
it being the big,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
circus that it tends to be.
It's just like they just happen to be trans.
Yeah,
It's just a thing instead of, oh my god, they're
exactly.
trans. Yeah, because like you mentioned before with the Disney thing where they were making so much hoo-ha about LeFou being LeFou?
Mm-hmm. Luffy.
Yeah, yeah, being gay, and then you see it, and it's just like, but is he? But is he? It's literally a blink and you miss it moment. Instead, it should just be one of those things where you watch it and then be like, he's really lusting after Gaston. I mean, it's Gaston. Kind of get it because like Gaston is Gaston. He's like handsome and like it apparently. He really isn't. Um,
I mean,
and
the the guy who
yeah,
plays him is Luke Evans. Is oof, yeah,
I mean,
but not the character.
yeah, basically. Oh, Luke Evans.
He's very sweet as well.
Yeah, doesn't he sing as well?
Yes, he does. He has a lovely voice.
Yeah, I was just like, didn't he bring out an album?
He
Yeah.
did, which I have. I have that album.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it'd be nice to just see more fairer representation that is a bit more realistic and, you know, less
Well, as I say,
fanfare.
there is that character in Frozen who wasn't kind of. There wasn't
You?
like months of exactly him. There wasn't like months of build up saying, "Oh, did Disney put a gay character in their film?" It was just he was just there and he had a family.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
It's just like
it was
more of
very
that,
nice. Yeah,
more of that, because that's who we are. We're neighbors, we're friends, we're students,
you
we're
family.
people who have sauna businesses with a big summer blowout.
Big summer blowout. Yoo-hoo.
Yeah, that's more of what I want to see instead of. It's almost like, oh, what's the phrase? It's not torture porn. Yeah, kind of like the Pain Olympics, where it's just like I'm struggling
Yeah.
so much because of my identity. It's like that does happen, but that's not all we are. Because I feel like when watching films and media with trans rep, it's we're either villains,
Mm-hmm.
we're completely and utterly misunderstood, and nobody will ever understand us, and we just get killed.
There's also a Pixar short out this summer, I think, with a which focuses on a gay couple.
Oh,
I think.
yeah.
Um, so that'll be nice. But I would like to see more of it. Just kind of
Mm,
trans characters just being there, being part of a story without it being a
yeah.
made a big scene out of. You know?
Yeah. A lot less othered
Yeah.
instead of either characters that get killed because of one reason or another, or have an absolute struggle. I say an absolute struggle. There's what was the series? It's on Netflix, and it's about a house in San Francisco, and it's got Ellen Page in it.
Hmm.
Because there's
I don't
a
know.
trans character in that played by a trans man, and I think the way that they dealt, because the guy was in a relationship with a woman,
Mm-hmm.
and they were in a relationship before he transitioned, and she's a lesbian, and she's very, set in her identity,
Mm-hmm.
quite rightly so. And as the male character, the trans character progresses with his transition, she becomes more and more uncomfortable with her sort of sexual identity as a lesbian. It's just like, look, like how can I be a lesbian if I'm with a man?
That's
And they,
really
yeah,
interesting.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and it's just like that's because usually there's the thing of like, oh, you're a trans person, you're never going to find love.
Mm.
That gets repeated a little too often. Whereas with this series, it was like I didn't quite like her character all that much for different reasons. But like when she's talking about her own identity, her sexual identity, it's like I don't like you, but I get where you're coming from. And it's just I think the character could have been like it could have been written differently, but at the same time this is also very realistic. There's there's just things about the characters or characteristics that just irritate me. But I think in terms of like the actual story, how she was written, how she was acted, like portrayed, it was very well done, and it is very realistic, and it's the thing of like this is what we do generally have to deal with. So in terms of me not liking the character, it's the thing of like I don't like the character, but like I get it.
That
And
is
it that's
something very very interesting. Is exploring kind of
mm,
either gay trans men or lesbian trans women, and
yeah,
seeing how their gender identity can match up to their sexual identity. It's very interesting.
yeah, because like with the transgender man, he was just like, well, I still love you and everything, and they'd have a lot to figure out. And then with the the lesbian cis woman, it was just very I love you, but like you're a man, so how can I as a lesbian be with a man?
Yeah,
Just exploring that.
which is a very complicated point in itself, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. Yeah, especially like because that's a story that I don't think gets told, where it's just like what do couples do when one starts transitioning?
Mm, that is very
Uh,
interesting.
yeah, and then because there's a few times, few where the couple ends up separating,
Mm,
and I think that's an interesting thing to explore.
definitely.
Whereas usually, like the sort of struggle with relationships is the thing of, oh, but you're trans. How are you going to find somebody to love you? Instead of, okay, but you're trans. How are you going to navigate the world of dating with your identity instead
Mm.
of because of your identity you're not going to find love?
Especially if you're already in a committed relationship with someone who
Mm,
sees you as one thing,
yeah,
or sees you as being one identity.
yeah. I think
Yeah.
it's a bit of like um yeah, context intent. Like how do which angle do you look at it from instead of sort of pitying us and othering us and seeing us as something that's either pathetic or not what we are and not what we're ever going to be. It's okay, this is how you are. How do you navigate it?
And how do you navigate increasingly complex issues
Yeah,
surrounding interpersonal relationships and the like?
yeah, yeah.
It's,
So
it's
maybe
a
for
very
something
tough position.
have you seen The Marriage Story?
Yes, yes, I love Marriage Story.
First off, why is it called The Marriage Story when it's about divorce? Secondly, Adam Driver, love him. Yes,
Yeah, he's
always.
great.
And then also, like, what if that was one of the things of like the character was like, actually, I'm trans, and that's how it all blows up.
Mm,
Just change that one thing. But that's not the only thing. Like everything else still stands, but it's just like that one thing of like, oh yeah, we're going to therapy because you know this person is transitioning. They
hmm
don't identify with the gender that they were assigned at birth. But like, there's all these other huge issues too, and it's just like that's just one grain amongst everything else. It's not
Yeah,
the center of the story, but it is a part of it. It could be like a
Cataclysm.
I can't say that word. Yeah, yeah.
See, now you mention it, I really want to see that film now. Now that you've put that idea in my head to just change that one detail, and that's something I really, really want to see. Hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of like with La La Land as well, where it's just that what if this one thing changed?
I'd always see. I really liked La La Land, but I thought Ryan Gosling's character was a bit of a dick. I
A
think
bit. Yeah, yeah.
I think that was my biggest
Yeah,
thing with it.
I didn't get it. I didn't understand the romance part of it. Like, why were they attracted to each other? But I
And
think
one
that's a very cis het white thing.
and what
Just
one
gonna
of
go
the
straight out there with it.
one of the other things that I didn't understand was like most of the way through the movie, and the Emma Stone's character is like, "What if you find someone more beautiful than me?" And I'm like, "You're Emma Stone. You look like Emma Stone. You are beautiful. Why are you thinking? Why are you thinking you're not? Have you not seen a mirror?"
See
That
that
really annoyed me.
now that I actually kind of understood because it's that sort of self-deprecation of if you're constantly being told you're not enough, if you're not, you don't look a certain way, because you can see her go through the auditioning process, and the auditioning process isn't very great for the good old ego, is it?
No,
And
definitely not.
yeah, and then when you see who is getting cast, but then there's the messages we get in the media every single day about how we should and shouldn't look, how we should and shouldn't behave. So I can understand why there could be that.
I mean, I can understand the lack of self-esteem, but it's still kind of
It hits
smacks of
different though. Yeah.
them wanting to create sympathy for a character for a reason that they shouldn't be building sympathy for.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anyway, it's been a very informative chat. Anyway, it's killed an hour and a half. Anyway, so uh, do you have anything you would like to plug? Anything you'd like to promote before we close the podcast for the month?
Oh, just Chellaman. He's got a YouTube channel. He's on Twitter. just yeah, look him up. He is literally art himself. He creates art. His girlfriend is an artist as well, Mary V. Just check them out, and you're welcome. and watch Titans, because the second series, it's something.
And as usual, I can be found at the same places. I'm on Twitter at Nathan Ken Major. My website is majorfilmreviews.com. On there, you can find the links to buy my books on Amazon or buy me a coffee on Coffee. Each one that you pay towards might buy me a new film to review on my website, which hit over 1,000 views last month, which I was very pleased about. So if you've been enjoying what I've been writing, then please keep reading, and we shall be keeping bringing those podcasts to you over the next few months, talking about all the comings and goings in the film industry. We've kind of had to think of a different subject this month because, in case you've been living under a rock, not much has been happening in these last few months. Come the start of next month, we might have a bit more to talk about current film-wise. But apart from that, I haven't got anything to plug. Visit my website, buy a book if you like it. And thanks to my co-host, Angel. Thanks again, Angel.
Thanks for having me.
And we shall talk to you again next month.
Hey.
Bye-bye.
I've